Hello, welcome to the Writer's Room. I'm Jane Cleland, the author of the Josie Prescott Antiques Mysteries. And here in the Writer's Room, we talk to some of the most engaging and interesting authors of the day, including today, Jonathan Santlofer. Jonathan is the author of 5 best-selling novels: The Death Artist, Colorblind, The Killing Art, Anatomy of Fear, and The Murder Notebook. Anatomy of Fear won the Nero Award, one of the most prestigious awards in the mystery world. Jonathan has also been awarded 2 National Endowment of the Arts grants. Additionally, he's been a visiting artist at the American Academy in Rome, the Vermont Studio Center, and he serves on the board of Yaddo, the oldest arts community in the United States. He's the co-editor, contributor, and illustrator of the anthology, The Dark End of the Street. His short stories have appeared in anthologies and collections such as the Mystery Writers of America's The Rich and the Dead, New Jersey Noir, and Ellery Queen Mystery Magazine. Jonathan is also very well known as an artist. His artwork is included in such collections as the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Art Institute of Chicago, the Newark Museum, the Norton Simon Museum, and the Tokyo Institute of Contemporary Art. Jonathan lives and works in Manhattan, and he's currently working on a new novel, which we'll be talking about in just a little bit. But I thought I'd like to start by asking Jonathan about your art. How did you start with art? What was the kind of art you started with, and how did that lead to your becoming an author?
Well, it's a somewhat circuitous road and path. I always wanted to be an artist. I know that's a weird thing to say, but I think it's probably because I was one of those boys who was not a very good baseball player, and so I needed something. And I could always draw. I was actually a terrible student until I got to art school in college. But in any case, I pursued that. You know, I had this idea that I was going to be a famous artist. I have no idea I didn't know what that meant. I think nobody knows what that means until you're doing it. And then I went off and I studied art in college. I went through graduate school in painting, and then I set myself up in Hoboken, in this odd little studio in Hoboken. And through a series of things, the way things happen in life, I continued to paint, and I had a lucky break. And I ended up in a Whitney Biennial, which, if people know about that, it's a kind of great ticket to other things. And
explain what it means. What's a
it's a very
Whitney is a museum.
The Whitney Museum of American Art. It's a very prestigious show. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you a very quick, funny story, which is that I went to a party with an older artist. I was 21 years old, and I was so nervous that I sat on the couch and talked to one person the whole night, which you're never supposed to do. But at the end of the night, she said, "Where can I see your work?" And I said, "Why? What do you do?" And she said, "Well, I'm the curator of painting and sculpture at the Whitney Museum of American Art." And I was like, "What?" And 6 months later, she came and saw my work, and it changed my life.
And what happened as a result of that show?
I got a gallery, and I started supporting myself as a painter. I mean, I did some teaching, and I've always done some teaching, which I love, but I was very, very, very lucky.
And how does that connect to mystery writing? What happened?
Well, I'll tell you the story of how that happened. I did write. I always wrote about art in some ways, and I wrote for Art News. And in any case, the story of what led me to mystery writing, aside from the fact that I love crime fiction and always loved crime fiction, it's a long time ago now, but in 1990, I had 3 exhibitions. It was sort of the best year of my art life. I had a show in New York, a show in LA, and a show in the Midwest, and they all came together in one exhibition in Chicago. Plus, my newest, they collected work from my best work for 10 years, plus my newest 6 paintings. So I had no work. It went to Chicago. The show opened on a Friday, and the gallery burned down on Saturday. Which was, I'll tell you what happens.
You lost all your work.
I lost all my work. I did. And so did a lot of collectors who had donated to it. And it sent me on, I don't want to be corny, but it sent me on a journey as to what art meant to me and what my life meant to me. Although I will say one thing. If you lose all your work, you can become very brave.
Why? You'd think it would make you go into a shell.
I did. I was a little bit knocked down for a while, but I think what it is, it's sort of like having, you realize that if no one died, so it's not a tragedy, and it puts your work in perspective. It's sort of like when I was in graduate school in painting, my graduate school teacher would have us work on a drawing for a week, one full week, and at the end of the week he'd make us tear it up. Oh. And the reason he would tear it up is so we wouldn't fall in love with our work. It's like killing your darlings in writing. You know, you have to be ready to get rid of those things.
Explain what that little quote means.
Killing your darlings. It means the things in your writing that you love. You know, those great paragraphs you've written, like, you know, God came and touched your shoulder and you were a genius.
And why should you kill them?
Because you read it the next day and it's throwing everybody outside of what the book is about. You know, it's a beautiful piece of prose and it's just stopping everyone cold.
Yeah.
So after the fire, and I picked myself up off the floor, I was invited to Rome to be a visiting artist at the American Academy in Rome. And I couldn't paint. So there I was in this beautiful, beautiful studio overlooking Trastevere. I had these beautiful views, and I could not paint. So I started smoking again.
Why? When you say you couldn't paint, why not? You would pick up a paintbrush and just nothing would come.
It was kind of like it's hard to explain. I just sort of, something had been taken away from me. It took me 10 years to refine my artwork. And during those 10 years is when I wrote my first novel. I just, I needed something new. I had been part of a group called Eccentric Abstraction. I had gotten attention very early on. You know, I was, as I said, I was supporting myself as an artist in America. So
it sounds almost like writer's block.
No, it wasn't a block. It was not a block. It was trying to figure out why I had done what I had done my whole life and what it meant to me. And I went from being an abstract painter to being a totally representational painter in a several-year change. And during that time, I started writing, and I found that I think writing saved me, you know?
Why, I almost don't know how to phrase the question, because what I want to ask you is, why did you write a mystery? And the obvious answer, you've already told us, you like crime fiction, that's what you were interested in. But if it was part of a cathartic process in some way, why didn't you write a literary novel? Why didn't you write a memoir? Why a mystery?
Well, that's a great question, because I didn't start it as a mystery. I started this book when I was actually in Rome, and it was about an artist, an artist who'd lost all his work and was a mess. And it was, what happened is I got back to New York and I read it and I thought, I hate this guy. He's a whiny, annoying, just, you know, grow up. And so what I did as a fun thing is I killed me, on the page. I spent a whole day killing myself in all sorts of ways. And you know, that was the catharsis. You know, you can kill yourself on the page and you wake up in the morning. It was so great. And I thought, I don't want to write this serious, glum book. I want to write a big, scary, fun crime fiction novel. And that's what it changed. I had been working on the other one for 2 years.
Yeah.
And I just dumped it.
And what came out? What did you end up with?
Well, I ended up with The Death Artist. And, you know, I wrote The Death Artist as a satire. I thought it was a really, really funny book. And then People magazine chose it as a page turner of the week, and they said it was the scariest book of the year. And it was like, really? Oh, okay. But I mean, you know, I meant a lot of it sort of tongue in cheek, and there were people who get that. But it is scary, because I think I grew up, I loved being scared. I always loved being scared.
Interesting.
You know, yeah.
What do you prefer, the painting or the writing?
You know, they're so different, because painting's very physical, and writing's very internal. I do both, and luckily I don't sleep much, and I never have, so I have a lot of time. Yeah.
And the protagonist, talk about him for a minute.
Well, when I killed myself before this book, it was a man, was the protagonist, and then I thought, I'm going to choose a protagonist that's the opposite of me. So I made the protagonist a woman. I'm not standing up so you can't tell, but I made her very tall, because I always wanted to be tall. I made her rich, which I wasn't, and I made her beautiful. So, you know, all the things I was not. Kate McKinnon, but I wanted her to be, of course, a little flawed, challenged. I wanted her to be one of those tough, smart, just the kind of woman who had no fear but was a real person. And so she leads the story, and I kind of fell in love with Kate, and there was a lot of...
And that came out on the page.
Thank you. I felt very close to her, and I'll tell you, at one point, my editor, when the book got sold, my editor said, there's only one problem. She said, now don't be offended, but Kate doesn't do any girl things. I said, well, what do you mean? She said, well, she never thinks about her hair. She doesn't think about her clothes. Can you do a little research? So I, you know.
And how did you do that research?
Well, I didn't dress up, but I did. Kate is a rich woman. So I went to Barney's and I looked at clothes that I thought she would wear. I remember one point I was in the shoe department holding a pair of women's shoes, and the sales lady said, may I help you? And I went, no, I'm just looking, you know. So it's like, I thought I'd better stop that, you know. But then my daughter gave Kate a makeover and made me think about it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so.
We'll be right back with Jonathan's thoughts on writing and the writing process. Please join us right after this short break.